Hey friends, this is Jim here at Science Talk. Want to share with you this article that appeared in the online publication EOS. And as you can see here, food deficits in Africa will grow in a warmer world. Under the combined stress of growing populations and current warming trends, many African nations will face increasing shortfalls in food production in the coming decades. And this was published early October 2022. Here's a photo of a farmer having his cattle basically plow through some soil in Hosen, Ethiopia. And the caption further states, even with increases in sustainable farming practices and water storage, new research projects major food deficits for much of Africa in the coming decades. Okay, so let's see what they're saying here. Africa has one of the world's fastest population growth rates. Right there, that's a problem. Growth models project the continent's current population of about 1.3 billion people will nearly double to 2.5 billion by 2050. And it's likely to keep growing beyond that. I'll have some more to say about that in a bit. Okay? I don't think so. At the same time, malnutrition is widespread in Africa. 21% of the population faces food insecurity. Okay. George Carlin did a really funny routine about euphemisms. And I'm really sick of seeing this food insecurity euphemism. Why don't we call it what it is? 21% of the population are starving. They're going hungry. That's what it is. That's what it means. Stop hiding behind, these little labels that makes it seem not so bad. No, we're talking about starvation and people going hungry, not having enough to eat. Let's just be blunt about it. And the continent is especially vulnerable to climate change. Well, all continents are really. Warmer regions are already experiencing desertification, and areas of low agricultural productivity are susceptible to climate shocks from adverse weather, drought, flooding, erratic precipitation patterns, usually rainfall in Africa. The combined effects of population growth and climate change raise a serious question for the continent. How will Africa feed its growing populace in increasingly unfriendly conditions? Well, they won't be able to. So let's look at this right here. 1.3 billion people, almost doubling to 2.5 by 2050. That's, we're almost at the end of 2022 into 2023. That's 27 years. That's crazy. Okay? And likely to keep growing beyond that? No. The problem is, let's face it, people don't want to face it. Too many damn people on the planet. I've discussed this numerous times before with you folks. There are too many people. We're well above the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity for human is around 600 million. And planet-wide, we're at what, 8 billion now? And they're talking 10 billion by 2050 and so on. It's not sustainable. Where are you going to put these people? You need land to house them, land to grow food. If you got more and more people, you're going to run out of available land. You're going to strip the resources. As I said, this is not sustainable. This will collapse. And couple that with various pandemics, wars. And and they're already talking about right here. 21% of the population are hungry, starving. They don't have enough food now. So I highly doubt that this is going to keep happening here. I highly doubt it. And this whole thing about desertification. I did a recent video where in the past we have evidence that indicates that the Sahara was, let's just say, was not a desert. It had vegetation, it had grasslands, it was even somewhat lush. What happened? Milankovitch. Changing, the tilt of the axis, the precession, in the orbit, the change in the orbital shape there, all change energy input, all change precipitation patterns, and that the Sahara went from a nice vegetative area to what we see today. Probably going to continue. We already know that climate change is bringing in wild swings in weather. It's causing drought, flooding, changes in precipitation patterns. So it's not just heat, it's everything that goes with it. So how will Africa feed its growing populace? With great difficulty, and there simply won't be enough food to go around. Beltran, Pena, and Dororico applied the results from agrohydrological, climate, and socioeconomic models to assess food self-sufficiency and climate vulnerability for 49 African countries under a scenario in which the global average temperature is 3°C above pre-industrial levels by later this century, which will probably be 2040, 2050, in that realm. They found that under a 3-degree warmer climate, Africa will face a severe mismatch between population size and food autonomy. Translation: you're not going to be able to feed anyone. People are going to starve and die from starvation. By 2075, food production in Africa will be able to feed only 1.35 billion out of an estimated 3.5 billion people, a finding that already accounts for increased agricultural productivity through improved irrigation and sustainable practices. Okay, a couple of things I want to say about this paragraph. There are quite a few ecologists who basically state that a warming of 4°C above pre-industrial levels is sufficient to render humans extinct. Let that sink in. And 2075, well, James Lovelock, the gentleman who, he recently passed away. It was like 104 or something like that. But he was the one who coined or came up with the Gaia hypothesis, that the Earth was a living organism. It's meant as a metaphor, more or less. But the point was everything is interconnected. He opined that by 2075, there'll be 2 billion people in total left on the planet, i.e., a 75% reduction from current population levels. He's probably being optimistic. So these constant projections, the growing is going to continue. No, it's not. Basic ecology informs us that at some point there has to be corrective measures that kick in. And we can do all the technological advances we can come up with, but it comes right down to the fact that there are too many people on the planet. There's not enough land to house people and set aside for coming up with food. And the available land is decreasing as well, because a lot of places are becoming inhospitable due to climate change. For example, in the Middle East, not too far from Africa, it is thought that as early as 2040, it will be too damn hot there for people to live. And that whole region will become inhospitable, uninhabitable for humans. So under this climate scenario, African nations will have to expand cropland and rely more heavily on food imports. I have something to say about that in a moment. Both approaches come with downsides, you think? Cropland expansion carries potentially disastrous ecological ramifications, whereas reliance on imports would make Africa more susceptible to volatility in global food prices. The analysis indicated that Eastern and Western Africa will have the most significant import needs. Okay, look at this statement here. Africa would make Africa more susceptible to volatility in global food prices. Okay, go away. It's not just food prices. Right now, Africa gets a significant portion of their grains from Ukraine. And what is going on in Ukraine right now about now? Well, unless you've been living under a rock, Russia's been invading them. Russia's trying to destroy the country. And part of what they're doing is Russia's trying to use energy, the cold, food, power, heat, etc., water as weapons. So earlier this year they were blocking Ukraine from exporting its grain. They could, Odessa is a major port for Ukraine, as are other places such as Berdyansk, Mariupol, and other locations like along the Sea of Azov and so forth that are major ports for Ukraine, and their economy relies on these exports. Russia was blocking grain ships from leaving Odessa. A deal was worked out, and significant amounts of grains were being able to be shipped out. The grains that Ukraine export go primarily to the Middle East and a lot of it to Africa. So here we have innocent Africans who are going to be forced into starvation because, you got some crazy dictator there having grandeurs of, a return to the 17th century or some silly stuff like that. This is an example of, when you have too many people and you have all this dependency, things can go wrong very quickly. Continuing on, the research also suggested steps to address the grim forecast, increasing the proportion of plant-based foods consumed and improving water storage. That's critical. Access to clean water, particularly in arid regions, can help mitigate growing food insecurity. For example, in addition, having current food loss and waste rates could bolster domestic food production and feed an additional 130 million people. Now, that's a valid point. Okay? Take, for example, here in the U.S. The U.S., I'm sorry to say, are great offenders at wasting a lot of food. Just look in the dumpster behind restaurants and look and see what's there. Now, part of it is, Blonde, when you go to the restaurant, they give huge amounts of portions out. Maybe we should cut down on the portions. Maybe Americans don't need to eat, you can fill it in. We don't need to eat a whole pizza in one go, or 4 Big Macs, whatever the hell, or super size and all that other silliness. So serving size is a problem. Serving size leads to a lot of food waste. So this is a very good point, and you can apply it worldwide. I mean, the ravens don't mind, though, however. I have to share these with you. Um, Ravens up here in Alaska, they're cool, and they're highly regarded by the natives. Um, I one time saw a raven. I think it was behind what restaurant? Might have been like a Pizza Hut or something like that, or a McDonald's, one of those places. He had so gorged himself on whatever he found in the dumpster that when he tried to take off to go flying. So he's literally running. He's in a parking lot and he's flapping his wing and he's running around and he can't get airborne. And you could literally see him basically say, "Oh, screw this," folded his wings up and just started continuing waddling along on the ground. He had eaten so much that he couldn't get airborne. Another time, this is actually pretty clever. It was something like 35 below. I was coming out of the one of the athletic centers on campus. I had just done a little bit of a workout, taking a shower. So you know I go outside and there was a little garbage pail there with one of those swinging lids that with the axis in the center. And there's two ravens on there, and one raven would would stick his bill down on one side and open up the cover there so it'll be vertical, and the raven on the other side would reach in and grab something. What was he grabbing? McDonald's fries. So he would grab and help himself a bit of that, and then they switch sides so that the one that just ate would then hold open the lid for the other one to go grab some fries. So, but again, there is a lot of food wastage, and so that is a legitimate concern, and it does need to be addressed. And that food can go to help a lot, help feed a lot of people. And so, in building on this, reducing food loss and waste rates, the researchers noted, however, that these solutions will not eliminate projected food deficits on the continent. So, what they're saying is, even if no food was wasted, you're still going to have people going hungry. The second of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is to end hunger and malnutrition. This research suggests this goal may not be feasible in Africa under the current emission and warming paradigm. Well, there is as stark a statement you're going to see. This goal may not be feasible in Africa under the current emissions and warming paradigm. What they're basically getting at is that there's going to be mass starvation, mass amounts of death from starvation or now malnutrition. It's coming, it's happening now, people. Inability to feed the entire world. So we're going to, and that's because there's too many people. We can't replenish the resources we keep harvesting. And don't forget, with warming temperatures, this affects plants as well. Plants, like any organism, have preferred temperature ranges. If it gets too warm for these plants, they're going to lose a lot of moisture through transpiration, increased transpiration, and they're going to wither and die. A lot of the plants that humans use for consumption are what's called C3 plants. Basically, C3 plants prefer temperatures basically 83 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Well, we're starting to see temperatures above 83. There are several C4 plants which can tolerate warmer conditions, but even those plants of being stressed out. So, and it's not just, the temperature, it's the soil moisture content. As you increase the air temperature, and especially if it's a dry area to begin with, it's going to suck the moisture out of the ground. And if the plant needs a lot of moisture to grow, well, it's not going to be able to do so. And throw in changing precipitation patterns where regions that maybe had dependable rainfall no longer have that. Again, the crops are adversely affected. So we have warming air temperatures. That's not good for the plants. The ground is drying out. Not good for the plant. Precipitation patterns are changing. Not good for the plants. And whatever food you can harvest, numerous studies are showing and have shown that the nutritional quality of the harvested food is decreasing. That adds to the malnutrition. So between the continual warming, and don't forget all the heat energy in the oceans is going to get diffusing to the atmosphere, got continual warming. We're going to see famines. We're going to see mass starvation deaths. We're going to, as the permafrost thaws out, the cryosphere thaws out, unknown pathogens are going to be released. It's going to, roar right through the humans, killing off a bunch. And then, you got these things called, humans like to engage in, called wars. It does seem humans are bent on going extinct this century. It sure appears that way. So, I wanted to bring this to you as an example of what's coming down the pipe, and as an example of what I mean when I say there's too many people on the planet. We simply can't come up with the resources so these people can meet their minimal basic daily needs. So, this is just the start, folks. This is just the start. Until next time.